like they were like so terrified and they were dangerous. They would just fucking woof. Yeah, dude. If that pan, if you didn't know how to dump exactly the right amount of powder, like you dumped too much or too little, like it just wasn't, ideal. It was just as easy to like pick up a spear and fucking stab somebody, or a sword or something. And then somebody came out with the arquebus, which was like a fucking rifle, like a smoothbore like rifle, is like comfortable to hold and shoot. And then somebody rifled a musket, like figured out like how to make a machine that could rifle that shit. And then
that happened before more than single shotguns came out.
Yeah, there was shotguns and stuff back in the day, but they were still black powder
And single shot.
Like, yeah.
When did like the cartridge get developed? Or
the very first cartridge was developed sometime around 1831, I believe, and it was like very crude.
Was it with shells?
Yeah, it had a shell and it had a bullet, but it was like the bullet was encased all the way in. It looked like a 410 shotgun shell, basically, and the bullet was encased inside of the casing, like it didn't stick out, And then a few years later, which one was it? I want to say it was the fucking 45 long Colt or something like that.
In what year?
It was like 1860, or no, what? No, it would have been like 1830 something was when they started coming up with cartridge rifles. And there was like the 30 WAC, the 4570, 3040 Craig Jorgensen. Cartridge rifles didn't really get it like super. It was not that they weren't popular. It's just that governments hid that technology. Like in order to rifle the barrels of guns, because that was like back then in the day, those were the weapons of mass destruction. Like if everybody on the other side is shooting single shot muskets, and you have a fucking repeating bolt action rifle that shoots 5 rounds, like 80 rounds a minute, it's like you have that may as well be an atomic bomb, like. And they kept technology like that hidden for a long time. But the first military to use rifled muskets were the French.
The Frenchmen.
Around the 1800s, 1801.
Those cowards, always giving up and making guns to shoot people.
Oh no, dude! At that time, they were the greatest military in the world.
Really?
The Grand Army, of Napoleon, 1798 to 1818. That was probably the greatest fighting force on the face of the earth.
So the guns were invented under Napoleon?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was all about science and like repressing the church, because he thought that the church exalted way too much control over, like, not so much the masses, but what the masses were doing. And he rebuked that control that they had, and science and the arts and the engineering flourished. They came up with a puckle gun, which was like basically the very first automatic weapon. It was like a fucking automatic musket that had like 7 barrels, like in a line, and you would line up a certain amount of cotton and powder in a bullet and powder and a bullet and a powder stacked on top of each other, and you would light it off, and it would kind of work like a firework, and it would, like, as like the powder burned on the inside, and it would be like
That's the puckle gun?
Back and forth. Yeah, puckle gun. It would fucking shoot bullets out of each of these barrels back and forth over and over again, basically making an automatic weapon. And if you had like a dozen of those on a field when the enemy was charging, it was like I was saying, like a machine gun.
Close them down.
You just shoot in a straight line, and it was on a swivel thing that they would crank, and it would go do like a sprinkler one way, and then they would crank it back the other way, and they would just fucking pepper the enemy line with bullets. But there was all basically, up until the invention of the rifled gun, or the rifled musket, it was like anything you could cram down the barrel and throw at the enemy was pretty much mandatory. Was like whatever.
Shoot whatever.
Back in the day, they had octagon barrels.
Why? Just
because nobody could forge an actual round barrel. It was like way too hard, so they made them octagon, which was easy to forge. You could make like a thing to bang it into. But the barrel was literally octagon, so like you'd be forcing bullets down an octagon barrel, so they would come out all fucking jagged and fucking like not accurate. Like you would shoot at a target like 40 yards away, and it would fly that way, hit some guy like you're not even trying to hit or whatever. guns didn't really get accurate until about the 1920s. No,
With
that's
the
not
introduction
true.
of the rifling.
That's not true. Guns were accurate. I would say the 1860s was when rifled guns started to become prevalent, like the Winchester 1864, like the lever action rifle.
The Winchester's where it's at with the.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like the old school Winchester in 32 and 44, and then 38, then eventually in the 30-30 Winchester. Those were, that was when rifled. Those were the prevalent rifled guns.
Well, like the bullets. When was like the typical jacketed bullet?
Right, when they started to switch over to cartridges was around during the Civil War, around the 1860s. The very first cartridge-fired guns were converted muskets that had new barrels rifled, and then they basically converted them to a percussion cap, where instead of you had to pull the hammer back, put a cap on, dump powder in the pan, and fucking those were flintlock, and then you had like a match almost like lit on the thing, so when it hit the pan, that match would strike the pan, ignite the powder, and fire. These ones, they pulled all that shit off and they just added like a little spike, like a firing pin, and that hammer would fall, hit the back of the cartridge, and it would fire. Or the edge of it, like a 22. Most early cartridges were rim fire, and then somebody invented the primer.
When do you think the primer happened?
Around the same time, about 1850s, 1840s. Most bullets, like I was saying before, that were rim fired, so the powder was actually pressed into the base of the cartridge itself, into the casing anyway, just like a 1022 or whatever, And then they used bullets like that for a long time, but they were just outdated. A primer fired bullet's more reliable.
Yeah, it probably can get more moisture without misfiring. Yeah.
Well, and they have and a rim fire. Like all it takes is a little bit of pressure crushing down on that rim, and all the powder ignites and goes off. On a primer, you need something to strike it really hard and right in the center of it.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of old rim fire cartridge guns would you'd go off. You'd be riding. And fucking pow, like the hammer would just and they would fire and
shoot their leg.
Yeah, so they weren't ideal. Like not saying they weren't reliable, but they just weren't ideal.
Not ideal.
And then around 18, I would say the pinnacle of firearms, when people started to make like serious strides and advancements in firearms, was between 1888 and 1922 was like when the biggest innovations in bolt action, fully automatic, and semi-automatic firearms were made. Basically, every foundation that we base guns off of nowadays I should say between 1888 and 1944. Basically, every single gun we use nowadays is based off of some proprietary system that was developed during that period of time.
By
between
who?
those 50 years. Yeah.
Is it like Colt, Winchester? Who?
Yeah, whether it's like, well, that's not true. Like today we have a few different types of gas systems that work the guns, but more or less like every gun that's been invented since the 40s and 50s and onwards is based off of some type of proprietary driving system that was invented back in the day.
Right.
Whether it's like direct gas impingement, direct gas blowback, recoil gas operated, recoil bolt operated, long stroke gas piston, short stroke gas piston. They were all developed back in the day, and like we've just been kind of adding little modern features and shit to them ever since. But most, like the AK-47 basically operates off of a long stroke gas piston. It's like you fire the gun, the bullet goes through the fucking barrel, the gas that's forcing the bullet gets forced out the end of the barrel, but part of it bleeds off this little valve, like this little hole inside the barrel, into a gas chamber, hits the piston, and the piston moves to the rear, slides over the magazine, and then the recoil spring forces it back forward, and then it strips around off the magazine, puts it back into the chamber, and you're ready to go. And all you gotta do is either pull the trigger again, or if you're in fully automatic, just hold the fucking trigger and shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would have loved that shit back. I always think about that as like, if you could like go back in time with just like a crate of guns, just like one crate of rifles, or like a dozen rifles maybe or something, or whatever, and like go to like some fucking ancient battle and just like give them or just like show them really quick how they
elite
work,
force people,
and just like see what would happen. Yeah, just like turn them loose just with those.
My
12
old
guns
boss,
forever.
when I worked at Xerox for a while, made a story about that. He was
That
like
would be
in the
crazy.
military too, where these soldiers, basically in Iraq or whatever, found this ancient thing and it sent them back in time to like the Roman days.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Some
And
shit
they
like
have
that.
their guns, you know. But they start like, you know, they're like badass soldiers or whatever, and so they get legions and everything. It's a pretty cool story. You'd
Yeah,
probably
and at a
into it
time like
actually.
that, for sure. If you could show up some kind of like fucking boomstick and like everybody would just straight up crowd around you, it'd be like, oh, you were definitely the leader.
It's like a badass.
Especially when they were all hella superstitious and like believed in like not just their own magic and superstitions, but everyone else's too. They were like, oh, the Greek, yeah, that's real too. They're like, oh, the Gauls, yeah, that shit's real too.
What ends up happening in that book is that they end up like fighting. There's divisions, so like they end up with, but some of them have elite. They still have legions. You know, it's kind of like the
ultimately,
story you were.
That's what I assume would have happened though. It's like right there would, even if you did that, it's
Yeah.
like somebody would fucking like, yeah, I don't even know. Something would happen like that.
So, do you think if you were in Vietnam, would you rather have an AK-47 or the alternative?
What was an M16?
Yeah, I think it is.
I think yeah.
Which was
it
the better
wouldn't matter.
gun?
If you knew how to shoot either one, yeah, you'd be good.
You think they're just all right? You don't think the M16 jams up or anything? It's
That's
just
because
as durable.
motherfuckers didn't clean them.
Well,
You know, really, it's like that's because like that's the difference between like a hardline guerrilla force and a conscription army. Most of those guys didn't give a shit. And like the M16 didn't jam up as much as they say it did. The people that all complained about him jamming up were rear echelon guys that never used them. And so when they did go to shoot him, they jammed because they hadn't cleaned him in fucking 6 months. And they'd been in country 9, you know. And so for their 12-month deployment, they were like, my M16 didn't work. Well, how often did you shoot it? Once. And how often did you clean it? Once. You know, before I got there, pretty much. Like,
I wonder which gun is more humane. You know what I mean? Doesn't the M16
No gun
have
is humane.
All right, but we're using them
Yeah.
to fucking have the war. What I mean is, how many more people are maimed and left brutalized, or you know what I mean?
it
With
don't
the-
matter, really.
Isn't the M16 a smaller?
Still, that's designed for more lethality, though.
Are you more likely to die
You're
if you
more
get hit by
likely
the
to get your arm
AK-47?
blown off
Right.
by
Oh,
a
okay.
fucking AR-15 bullet than an AK bullet. I mean, if we're just talking Full Metal Jacket, yeah, an AK bullet will fly right through you, and it like that was like I've read about ballistic tests from Vietnam, and they were saying like in the early. That's why the Russians now, when they make AK-47 bullets, they perforate the end of the bullet, and they make a little cavity hole, so that when the bullet actually hits bone or flesh, it fragments, it expands, and energy is transferred from the bullet to the target. Back in the day, I read tests that like the Soviets and the Chinese and everybody did from like 57 to 63. The M67 round 7.62 by 3.9 was Full Metal Jacket, and their expansion tests were showing that the Full Metal Jacket didn't start to tumble or expand until after 12 inches of full penetration. So if that means like if the bullet hit you, by the time it started to actually do any serious damage and transfer energy to you, it would have already left your body.
How can that be?
Because the bullet is so solid, it's a solid projectile with it has like a very smooth surface, you know. So it hits you, and what it actually wound up doing was just sliding right between internal organs or splitting right between the bone and just popping out the other side and just go and keep on going. Because none of the energy was transferred from the bullet to you.
Right.
The bullet kept the energy. And what they found was like all these guys were coming back from the field with what they thought were like minor pistol wounds. They thought somebody was out, like the NVA was out in the jungle shooting their guys with small calibered pistols, and they did ballistic tests with the AK-47 and found out that these bullets were just fucking flying right through you. They would just fly right through people. And so eventually the NVA, the Chinese, and the Russians started perforating their bullets, and they turned into just hellacious shrapnel. Like a bullet would hit you in the forearm and bounce up in and like come out your shoulder.
Oh,
The AR-15 was notorious for that. That's why nowadays they don't use Full Metal Jacket. They use what's called a green steel penetrator, and it's like a solid copper bullet with a steel rod inserted into the center of it. And the idea is when that bullet hits, the solid copper bullet peels away and fragments into a bunch of little pieces, and that solid steel little rod keeps on going and penetrates vital organs. And so, like, that's why the AR-15 is extremely deadly in, like, burst or auto. If you get sprayed with, like, 5.6 rounds of 5.56, it's just gonna shred you. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, so that's what I'm saying. When you talk about, like, what's more humane, I'm like, I really don't think there is such a thing as a humane bullet. Like, they're designed to create, like, maximum effect, like a maximum, like, fucking destruction, like terror or whatever on target when they hit. Like,
can they just make, like, poison bullets, like death?
Yeah, you can make
death shot bullets, basically. If you shoot them, they're gonna die.
Explode. You can make bullets that when they hit the target, they explode, and then they start burning like white phosphorus, and they just keep burning.
God,
and like, so it's like, even like, if you could literally get chemical burns from certain bullets. Like, they'll pass through you and leave the chemical burning substance in your body, and like tracers and shit are like that. They're coated in phosphorus and magnesium. And like, I've heard some nightmare stories, like guys, like, heads like literally bursting into flames from like taking bullets like through the side of the head and shit. Like, it's scary shit. Guns are no joke. Like, that's why when people are like, oh, like, yeah, okay, the most humane bullet there is a rubber bullet. Like, the bullets they make that are just straight up rubber, and they just shoot the fuck. I don't even know if you'd call it humane, but, you know, they just shoot the shit out of you, and you either give up or somebody with a real gun ends up having to take you down. Basically, it's like, I'm like, so yeah, that's about as humane as it gets. Maybe a taser, you know? I don't know.
A taser.
Guns are designed to kill. Like, bullets are designed to fucking kill and maim and destroy. Like, there's nothing humane about it.
Well, there is.
There's,
like,
there's a specific intention, and to be humane is not one of them. It's to kill, you know? You could say, like, what's more humane? I think you could say maybe what's more humane, a firing squad or a guillotine.
But humans kill.
Maybe you could debate that, but...
Humans kill.
Sure.
But there's a such thing as, like, a humane killing of an animal.
Well, it's like what we perceive. It's like, I would say it's like, yeah, there's certain ways to humanely kill a person, but I'm just saying it's like bullets and shit are not designed with the intent to be humane at all. It's like, we could consider certain deaths, I think, more humane than others. Like, I think, like, maybe a guillotine may be more humane than, like, lethal injection, but I don't know.
No, I feel like the lethal injection wouldn't be so bad if you ask me. You know, like, if they shot me up with some nice drugs and then put me unconscious.
I wish it was like that.
And then give me the death juice, and it's like, I'm not gonna really know.
You ever seen a lethal injection?
A little bit. I know what it looks like. And
I mean, have you ever watched one, like, botched or like successful
sometimes
or
they don't
botched
work.
or otherwise? It's frightening. Like, even a successful one, like, I think that shit's inhumane. Like,
if you live through it, do you get to go free?
Oh, dude, if you live through
twice?
it, you're, like, fucked up for the rest of your life. The chemicals they pump into you, it's like, there's no surviving
How can
that.
they let you?
Well,
just
they're
keep
surviving
you
it because
die,
people
you know,
do.
like,
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Have you ever watched an execution, a lethal injection execution? I've watched several, and after, like, I used to be all for it, and until I watched, I can honestly say, like, I wouldn't fucking wish that shit on my worst enemy. Like, after reading about, like, how some of the prisons can't get the drugs, and sort of, like, how prisons have bought them illegally overseas and shit, it's fucking crazy. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be the guy to decide who lives or dies, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna kill somebody, I don't think injecting them with that shit. After watching, like, 3 or 4 botched executions, and then watching a bunch where they were actually, even the successful ones are fucking gruesome. Like, watching somebody writhe in agony and die, and, like, you know what's funny about a lethal injection is there's nothing humane about it for the person being injected. Everything done to the person being injected is to make everyone watching them die more comfortable. That's why they fucking inject you with the one shit so that you feel all numb, or feel numb supposedly, and then the next shit, there's no reason for the first 2 shit that they inject you with. There's nothing that has to do with killing you. It's to make it so you don't writhe and make noise in front of everybody that you're dying in front of.
Listen to this.
You know, the shit that they mostly inject you with doesn't even numb the pain. It just
Listen.
paralyzes you.
I got this idea.
That is inhumane, I would
So,
say.
how bad do you think a heroin overdose really is? You know,
Pretty bad.
Like, you think so?
Or
Like, 'cause
probably
you're
not
getting
as
high
bad
and
as-
feeling all
probably
good and shit.
not as
and then
bad
you
as
fucking-
being injected with cyanide and sodium pentothal.
Right, so check this out. So if we start using heroin as the fucking way, that the method that we do lethal injection,
They've tried that.
Then it really because then it makes people, or then maybe people
Yeah,
will
and
think
they
about
watch-
it. They're
and they
just
watch
like,
the
hey, they
guy-
use this drug to kill people.
Yeah,
Why
they,
should
or
I
they
be-
didn't try heroin, but they tried an
Well, then
opiate
that
that was the
doesn't-
same. That was
Oh,
even. It
yeah.
was basically a fentanyl
They
type
should tell
thing,
people.
and they watched the guy fish gulp on a table for 3 hours.
I've never
Yeah.
overdosed on any opiates, so I don't really.
And that's what I'm saying. No, they like certain states. there was a Vice case recently, or a famous journal article case where a guy asked to be executed by fentanyl overdose.
Well, fuck, I think I might want to do that. You know, like if
Yeah,
you're
well,
gonna kill
it's
me,
like-
like fuck,
yeah.
just let me. Might as well
The
just
state,
let me get
you
high.
know what a lot of states are saying now? If you can provide your own suicide drugs, you can fucking do it.
Well, I want you to fucking get them for me. You're the
Well,
ones making it illegal, so I can't get them.
Well, that's the thing. That's the
drugs.
loophole. That's what I'm saying. But there's been, like in Arizona, they straight up tell you, if you can get a hold of your own lethal injection drugs and we can certify it, you can use
That's
them.
what I want for my last meal, bitch.
Sure.
You fucking bring me some heroin. I'll fucking-
There's been 3 known cases where they
There's
let
some
them, where they
oxycodone.
tried to, where they did the thing where the guys were like, overdose me on painkillers or overdose me
Yeah,
on
some
this.
opiates.
And it was the same outcome every time. Like they said they like fish gulped on a table
Why
for like
is
3
the
hours.
fish gulp? Like,
What's that?
why is the fish gulp? What happens? Like their
Like
heart
that- where
shuts
you're
down?
Like sitting there with your mouth like.
I don't really
like, trying
understand
to
what
fucking-
happens with an opiate overdose. Like, so you take too much fucking.
You ever seen someone overdose from that shit?
No.
Dude, that's exactly what they do. Your body's
Only on
struggling
Pulp
for
Fiction.
life.
But why? I'm trying to understand.
Like,
is it because of a heart attack?
I don't
Is
know.
that
Well,
what's-
it's your organs begin to shut down. Like what happens, I believe it's like your brain is no longer able to send signals to the rest of your body where it tells you things like, or it's trying to, and that's where you get the fish gulp thing where they're like, your body's like, breathe, motherfucker, breathe, nigga, breathe. You know, it's like breathe, but your brain is like shutting down. Like it's no longer to send those signals. You know, but it's like the same thing. It's like when you're going to sleep and you get jerked awake. It's like 'cause your body has that feeling like, oh, we're falling. You know, it's like wake the fuck up, like do something. It's the same idea. It's like when you're dying like that, your brain is struggling for oxygen. Your organs aren't functioning the way they normally would. Your brain and your body goes into fucking like death drive over mode, dude. They're like. It's like breathe, fucking something, pump some goddamn like fucking nitrogen into your veins at the very least, like something. But yeah, and then eventually you just shut down. Like it's some crazy shit. Fucking, I think fucking coming down off the shit, watching somebody coming down off the shit's worse than them fucking overdosing. But I think that's a way more painful death.
But they won't die from it, I don't think.
Oh, I could see it definitely.
Well, people can die from
You
it,
go in
kind of,
shock,
but
like
well,
that.
right, yeah, I mean, it's possible.
You get
but
hella
mostly
going into
it'll
shock
suck.
and die. I fucking, dude, after watching my friend Robert on the couch for about 3 weeks, oh yeah, you could fucking die from that shit.
Or
very
just
easily.
fucking get him real high for about a week and then just
That's
let
what
him
he
die.
was doing, fucking lying to me, telling me he was gonna get clean, and I'm like driving him to work so we can get his check every other day. And he keeps telling me, oh, it's not here, I can't get it. Turns out he got his check like 2 weeks before that, and he was just having me drive him there so we could score every motherfucking day. And then he came back and got way overloaded on my couch. And I was just like, dude, like, do I need to call you a fucking ambulance or like a fucking priest or something? It's like literally, dude, it's like the fucking Tasmanian devil on my couch. He's just like,
Really? Oh, so he was like ODing, was there shit coming out of his mouth?
And then he was coming down. Like first he was coming down and he was good for a couple days, and then he was just fucking, he did so much that he just fucking, I thought he was ODing on my couch. Never fucking seen anything.